So if you are somebody who's using Zoom a lot these days, as I think most of us are, then this definitely is a video that you'll want to check out. So this video is called, What's Your Zoom Voice? Well, hey there, it's Crystal Diaz here, co-founder of the Online Vocal Academy and vocal coach at CSME Studio. So as we all know, we are in the midst of a pandemic that has resulted in many of us having to conduct our work in schools and education and whatnot through Zoom. Even weddings, birthday parties, you name it, events, everything is happening online through Zoom. And if you haven't heard of Zoom yet, I would wonder, where have you been this past year? But anyway, so since September 15th, I have been teaching exclusively through Zoom. And so in the same respect, my husband is also a school teacher in Hong Kong. He's an international school teacher. He teaches geography. And no, it's not just about how to read maps, as I have been told. So I've had the opportunity to really be privy to my husband's classes when he's teaching, because he's literally outside in the living room teaching. And I noticed that his voice sounds very different when he is on camera versus when he's just having a conversation with me or my kids or with our friends. And so one day I asked him, "Hey, is that your teacher voice?" And he kind of looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" And he hadn't really thought about it, but he did say that when he's in the classroom, being in the classroom does cause him to use his voice very differently, of course, because you have to project, you're in a room, you don't have a microphone system, and you know, you're speaking with teenagers, you got to get their attention, keep them on task, etc., etc. But he said that on Zoom, the feeling is a little bit different, but he doesn't really know. It's not like he was doing anything particularly intentional about the way that he was using his voice. So as somebody who spent the past 12 years really paying attention to the way people use their voices, I can definitely say with certainty that we all do different things with our voice depending on the circumstances, depending on the context, depending on our situation. So all of this started me down the path of thinking about all the advantages versus disadvantages of having Zoom as a form of communication, as a tool for communication. Of course, the advantages are obvious. We can safely conduct our business and have events and whatnot through Zoom, but there are also disadvantages as well. And in this video, I wanted to share with you 5 different ways in which Zoom negatively impacts our ability to communicate, specifically related to the way in which we are using our voices on Zoom versus using our voices in person. Now, if you would like to know how to be more in control of your voice and to start becoming more aware of the way in which you use your voice, then I encourage you to check out my free resource, quiz.onlinevocalacademy.com. From there, you answer 5 questions, just answer them as best as you can, and based on your answers, you will get a vocal exercise routine guided by me that will help you to start to become aware of the way in which you're using your voice. Now, if you are a singer, then this is going to be great for you because these are vocal exercises that I've created specifically for singers. But if you are not a singer, you like singing, but really you're listening to this video because you want to be better at speaking, I encourage you to download these exercises anyway, because these exercises will start to get you to become more aware of your entire range and what is actually available to you as a speaker. Because if you don't realize that you have this incredible instrument and you're not regularly exploring it and getting to know it and exercising it, then you are leaving yourself at a disadvantage. Give the exercises a try and see what you discover. That's quiz.onlinevocalacademy.com. All right, so the first way in which our communication is at a disadvantage on Zoom is that we don't have the luxury or the advantage of communicating via body language. You right now, for example, you only see the top of my head until like here, where just below my shoulders. So whenever I'm gesturing, I gesture a lot with my hands. Whenever I'm gesturing, you don't see that. And so when you don't see that, sometimes gesturing is very, very helpful for emphasizing certain points. And beyond just gesticulating, even subtle shifts of the body can actually communicate a lot. The way in which we stand, the way in which we shift our weight, if we move around, that communicates a lot to those we are speaking to. And of course, on Zoom, we are limited because we can only interpret based on what we see in this little frame here. The second disadvantage that we have when communicating through Zoom is that we can't read the room. So I've been attending a couple of online summits recently, and these summits should have been taken place in person, but because of the circumstances, they were all conducted through Zoom. And many of the speakers kept saying, I can't read the room, I can't see your reactions, so I'm not sure how if there's any questions. And so even just that idea of reading the room, reading other people, is that we are at a disadvantage because maybe we can't see them if their cameras are not turned on. And also, even if the cameras are turned on, again, for the same reason I mentioned earlier, we can't see their body language, and therefore we can't read them. We don't know really if what we're saying is really being received by them in the way that we intend it to be received. Now, the third disadvantage we have when it comes to communicating over Zoom is that the nuances of our voice get lost. How many times have you been on a call with somebody and your internet's gotten shaky, or you lost connection for a little bit, and it could take place right in the middle of a person's sentence, and maybe some of those nuances of vocal tone get lost. And not just that, think about when you're communicating something important to somebody and they are nodding in response in real time to what it is that you're saying. But sometimes online, as you know, there's a delay. So sometimes you don't get that immediate response from that person, which makes it really difficult to really feel like you are in tune with that person in terms of how you're communicating. Those little subtle inflections and nuances get lost if the internet is not stable, or if the person's microphone is not clear, or if your headphones are not clear, there's suddenly some distortion in there. Those are all missed opportunities for effective communication. The next disadvantage that we have with communicating over Zoom is that we lose that sense of physical proximity with a person. And I think that in itself we underestimate how important that is. How many of you feel physically cut off, even if you are speaking to somebody on Zoom? You just know it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel the same as having somebody in the same room with you, next to you, where you can really sense their energy in a much closer way. Now, the final disadvantage that we have when it comes to communicating over Zoom is that you don't really know if you have that person's full attention. All right, let's just be honest. How many times have you been on a Zoom meeting and you've been looking at the camera, your eyes are towards the camera, but you actually have multiple tabs up in front of you? You're checking your WhatsApp, maybe your Facebook is up. Let's be honest. I think we've all kind of done that at some point in our Zoom meetings. So it may look like the person is paying attention to you, but really you as a speaker, as a communicator, you are competing with many distractions. But this is not to say that we should take this personally, because in a way we all do this and this is natural. So what are the solutions here? I've talked about all these different disadvantages that we have, and what are the solutions? And I do want to offer one solution here. Now, this is related to the 7-38-55 rule. The 7-38-55 rule is to do with the communication of emotions, whereby 7% of meaning is actually communicated through spoken word, 38% of a person's meaning is actually communicated through the tone of their voice, and 55% of meaning is actually communicated through body language. So this is according to a study that was done many years ago, and it's called the 7-38-55 rule. So what does that mean? Let's just break that down. 7% of meaning is communicated through words. So in the grand scheme of things, what you're saying matters far, far less. Body language is actually 55% of how you communicate meaning. And as I've just shared in this training, we have no body language. Our body language is very, very limited when we are on camera, when we are on Zoom. So 55% of our meaning is potentially already lost. So what do we have available to us? That carries 38% of our meaning, our tone of voice. So the way in which we're using our voices, the way in which we communicate through sound is what we have access to, is the most important tool that we have when it comes to communicating over Zoom. So with that, I want you to consider when you're communicating on Zoom, whether it's to your friends, your loved ones, or colleagues, or students, or clients, or whatnot, are you being mindful that the way in which you're communicating, the way in which your voice sounds carries the bulk of your meaning? And if you have no idea, if this is something that you haven't ever really thought about, I highly encourage all of you to record yourself. Next time you are on Zoom having a meeting with somebody, record yourself. Of course, ask permission for that other person, from the person that you're on the call with. Record yourself and review it. It's so important now more than ever to become mindful of the way in which we're communicating, given the tools that we have right now. And if we have no idea how we sound on camera, then we are already putting ourselves at a further disadvantage when it comes to wanting to make a bigger impact or get our ideas across in a way that people will listen and people will receive that information in the way you intend it to be received. Whether you want to use your voice to sing a great song, tell a great story, give a powerful presentation, or just have a conversation with somebody, I encourage you to check out my quiz.onlinevocalacademy.com to download your free vocal exercises to give you that first step of becoming aware of the way in which you are using your voice and the way in which your voice sounds and feels, so that you can start this path towards using your voice in far more meaningful and impactful ways. So that's all for now, and I'll see you next time.